Oh, man.
So, did I ever tell you when I was in high school and I didn't have a driver's license, how I got to work?
How did you get to work?
Well, I worked like at the McDonald's up the road.
Uh-huh.
And since it was such a short distance, I mean, it was quite easy for me to like just take a joyride on my pogo stick, and like just bounce up the road, like going like pogo 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 pogo. And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth, from Ukraine to Uganda. This podcast is called Hey Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I am the one who always sticks the landing, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, I mostly stick the landing, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you wondering what Hey Listen to This is, it's pretty much right there in the title. Hey Listen to This. Every week, me and Ryan gather to discuss an album, a music album, and we go by it track by track. And the reason we pick it may be because of a theme we're doing, or it could very simply be that. We just look at the other person and say, hey, listen to this. Last week, it was my turn to say to Ryan, hey, listen to this. And we did the album Fishnets and Cigarettes by Toledo. And Ryan, what were your thoughts about that particular experience?
So I was pleasantly surprised by like what that album brought to the table. Spoiler alert for the review. I really, really enjoyed the record. And I know I texted you this off air here, but like I think it was quite ironic at the end of the Bon Iver review. I equated the experience of going into Toledo as when we went into Jellyfish. And it's funny that those reviews are 1 year apart.
One whole year apart, like literally almost to the day
Yeah.
That those reviews came out. So apparently I just have a knack of pulling random things out this time of year.
Man, time is a little child wanting a lollipop, man.
Yeah, running in a flat circle. Where the hell did that come from?
That got dark. Anyways, so pivoting on over to what we're covering this week. What we're covering this week is we are diving into officially taking our first full plunge into the world of like what we like call Numetal, I guess. I mean, System of a Down is known as like a huge nu metal band, and also, ladies and gentlemen, that's who we're covering this week, System of a Down. Just in case if somehow you clicked onto this podcast episode without actually reading, or you can't read, which I mean, I don't mean to like exclude like 1% of our listener group.
Or this is 3 months in the future. You fell asleep and you let your Spotify go. And you're just like, wait, what are they talking about?
So yeah, this week we are covering System of a Down, and more specifically their second album, and that would be Toxicity. And for those of you who are like, hey, yo, whoa, I just woke up from a coma. I've been incubating for like 30 years. What is a System of a Down?
First of all, congratulations.
You missed a lot. Second of all, quick summary of a System of a Down here is they are an American heavy metal band formed in Glendale, California in 1994. And their members consist of Serj Tankian. By the way, if I mispronounce any of these last names, Lord forgive me, I have sinned. So Serj is the lead vocalist, keyboards. He's often known as a frontman for this group. The guitar player is Darren Malakian, and their bass player is Shavo Odagian. And then they have a drummer. Well, the original since 1997, their drummer has been John Dolmayan. He replaced the original drummer who, Andy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name because I didn't look it up before, doing the episode. But the group, started out when Serj and Darren attended a Armenian school as children, and they formed a band named Soil. And back in 1994, after only one live show that they did in one jam session recording, two members of that band left. The two members were non-System of a Down members, to be specific. So after Soil split up, Serj, Darren, and Shavo formed a new band, System of a Down. And the group took its name from a poem that Darren had written titled "Victims of a Down." And how did we get from victims to System of a Down? Well, I'm here to tell you. So Shavo believed that if they would change the word victims to system, it would appeal to a much wider audience. And also, fun fact, their musical heroes were Slayer. So they wanted to be much closer to the musical alphabet in terms of being right up against Slayer there. So I thought that was a fun fact. And that would actually explain a lot of their sound, to be real with you. So, they do a couple of gigs around the LA, California area, playing Hollywood clubs such as Whiskey A Go Go, the Viper Room, and they caught the attention of one Rick Rubin. And for those of you who are what is a Rick Rubin? Probably one of the most famous producers. Mm-hmm. Think about Jack Antonoff, but maybe crazier.
Yeah, and older, because he was in the 80s and the 90s. In fact, we've covered one of his albums before on this podcast with Public Enemy.
Yeah, so shout out to that episode. If you're interested, we covered It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. If you want to check that out, check it out. Just scroll back in your podcast feed. You'll find that episode pretty quickly. So, or you can just search. I digress. Getting back into the background of System of a Down here. So, after they got the attention of Rick Rubin, he asked them to keep in touch, and basically after that, the group recorded a demo tape near the end of 1997, and specifically sent that tape out to record companies. And one and one, you can probably guess where this is gonna go. Rick signed the group to their very first record deal, so hey, they're signed to a record deal. And they celebrated by doing a performance at the Roxy Theater on September 12th, 1997. In 1998, the group released their debut album. It's a self-titled release. They enjoyed moderate success with their first singles, Sugar and Spiders. Those singles became radio favorites. The music videos were frequently aired on MTV, because that was the time. Mm-hmm. And then after the release of that album, they actually toured extensively, opening up for their musical heroes, Slayer.
Oh.
Yeah. And the next, live gig that they had is they played at the second stage of Ozfest. Remember Ozfest, man?
I do remember Ozfest. So, quick side note, I'll try not to go as far as way off the tangent here, but back when I was in middle school, or rather back when my brother was in high school, my mom was a marching band booster, or part of she was a marching band parent, and my brother was a marching band, and so every year the marching parents would get this group together to do fundraisers for the kids, and one of the fundraisers, believe it or not, was working at a booth at Post Gazette Pavilion at the time. It was called Post Gazette Pavilion. Now it's back to being called Star Lake here in Pittsburgh. And I just remember that because my mom, who, comes from a rather conservative Christian family, Catholic, and raised as one of 11, she and these other moms from suburbia are working these stands selling soda and what else for these shows, which one of them included Ozfest. And she did that. She did Corn. I think, what was the one that had Five Finger Death Punch?
I think the only other like tour I know of that was of that ilk was the Family Matters tour. Was that be it? Was that be it?
That could be it. There might have been another one down the line. I don't want to say it was.
Mayhem?
I think that's what it was. I think it was Mayhem. Mayhem was the other one.
All right.
And I remember it because she brought home this booklet where they had a Puck Doku thing in the back because it was all the rage at the time,
Yeah.
except every number was 6. I thought that was funny. But I digress. So, yes, I do remember Ozfest. Please continue.
So yeah, that basically sets the stage for like how the group formed, and essentially what led them up to releasing Toxicity. And the album that we're covering today was their big break. The album debuted at #1 on both the American and Canadian charts. The album eventually achieved 3 times multi-platinum certification in the U.S. Even with the controversy surrounding Chop Suey, which we'll get into whenever we get to that track, the group still received constant airplay in the United States throughout the late 2001 and 2002 years. Also, outside of Chop Suey, like for those of you who are familiar with the album prior to us diving in for the review here, their other big singles off of that album were Toxicity and Aerials. And then also in May of 2006, VH1 listed Toxicity in the number 14 slot in the 40 greatest metal songs.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's a quick blurb about System of a Down, how they came together, on their journey up into the album, what this album, did for them, because it was their big breakthrough. Before I give my background on System of a Down, Matt, what is your relationship with the band?
My relationship with the band is not super much of one. I'll say this. I really didn't listen to a whole lot of hard rock throughout most of my childhood. The hardest rock I would listen to is like Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin or something like that. And then I got into high school, and my time in high school was around the time that Guitar Hero was coming out, and all of a sudden hard rock was like the thing for high schoolers to have fun with, because hey, I can play guitar and pretend I'm a member of Slayer even though I'm not. During that time I started getting more like modern rock. I started getting a little bit into the Foo Fighters, getting a little bit more into older, harder bands like Guns N' Roses, and a couple tracks I started listening to because some friends recommended them to me. Chop Suey was not one of them, but it was Lonely Day and also BYOB. And those, for the most part, were the 2 System of a Down songs I kind of put in and out of my musical rotation for the next 15 years, up until this. So that's basically it.
So you didn't know about Chop Suey prior to
So I will say I knew about Chop Suey, and I knew about Toxicity as well. I'll even go as far as saying I've probably heard Shimmy's the other one. I think I've heard Shimmy once or twice in the wild.
Okay.
But aside from those, I really had not gotten a big idea of what System of a Down was until this review.
And for me, my relationship with the group, they were one of the groups that I saw throughout high school as, I thought I was too good for them. In terms of, I actually had, major hater energy for them. Not as much as, Panic at the Disco, but they just weren't my speed. But it's interesting that you mentioned, the music video game genre there, because it's thanks to my experience playing Rock Band with high school friends, songs like BYOB and Chop Suey came into my rotation, my musical consciousness, and I did dig them. I did dig them quite a bit, and Also, there was like in high school, I was really into this band called the Dead Kennedys, and there was a YouTube video that was out there at the time that had the lead singer of System of a Down, Serj, doing a cover of a Dead Kennedys song. The backing band was the rest of the members of the Dead Kennedys, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But essentially a cover was done of the Dead Kennedys song Holiday in Cambodia. And I thought that was a fantastic cover. I was really impressed, and like the vocal comparisons between Serj and Jello Biafra, shout out to Jello Biafra, my hero, were I don't want to say pretty notable, but like it was a really good cover. And just like fast forwarding throughout the years, throughout like high school, and like fast forward to like today, this album here has been, I don't want to say like in my rotation, but songs like Aerials, Toxicity, they grew into like just tracks I would go back to if I was wanting to listen to System of a Down. And I knew songs like the other deep cuts off of here, like Prison Song, and like Bounce, prior to doing this review. But as for the majority of the review, because this album is officially 15 tracks long, that I didn't know the majority of the tracks. So, but like they're a group that I do recognize as being like a very important and influential group in terms of like emerging out of the nu metal scene, and like fortunately and unfortunately, nu metal kind of is a catch-all kind of genre where it like just blends a couple different genres together. So while a lot of people would not compare System of a Down to like Disturbed or the Godfathers of nu metal, Limp Bizkit,
Right.
The group unfortunately fell into that label.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about with some of the songs, that's not fair, because there are moments on this album that do sound like nu metal, but there's a lot of it that doesn't.
So, you ready to dive into what is a toxicity in the city?
We are going to talk about the toxicity in the city, and we're going to start with the opening track, which is Prison Song.
So, yeah, fantastic opener. And before I even say one word about Prison Song, I have a top 3 in this review and a bottom nothing. So, it's very rare that I've come across like a bottom track in the past couple of reviews.
You know what's funny? For the longest time, that was my problem. Like,
Yeah.
I did not have a bottom track, I want to say, for like a whole month.
Yeah.
And now it seems like it's shifting back to you in the I don't have any bottom tracks category.
Okay.
And for my record, I have a top 3 and a bottom 2.
Oh, okay. So yeah, specifically going back into Prison Song though, you can clearly see the thrash metal influence here, especially with that opening. I wrote down that it has like such a Metallica kind of energy, but I mean, if they have musical heroes such as Slayer, I can imagine that's where they took the direct influence from. But I'm not a Slayer kind of girly. I'm more of a Metallica kind of head. So
I mean, to be fair, there's like 1, maybe 2 songs tops that I've listened to by Slayer on a regular basis. But yeah, I'm more on the Metallica side myself.
yeah, but either way, you can see the thrash metal influence, especially like how the track opens up. And for me, like I really like. I know like thrash metal was a huge influence here, but I can almost thrash metal and like hardcore punk, they're kind of like cousins or sisters genres, because I really took like this song and like a lot of songs off the record as like being of the hardcore punk vein. And with here you get the repetition of, hey, they're trying to build a prison, and that's very direct of hardcore punk, where they would repeat a phrase ad nauseum throughout the whole track. And throughout the track, the band's doing great work, especially in the verse. I like the little accent phrases in the guitar that you can hear. Also, the way that the bass is recorded is very interesting, and I love the walking bass kind of feel in a thrash metal song that's pretty bold. And the drum work is pretty insane as well in the verses. And outside of the verses, the chorus has such a frantic energy. It's very much gonna be what we're gonna experience throughout the rest of the album in terms of like what System of a Down brings to the table in terms of like when they're coming together and like wanting to really just go all out. And speaking about like that frantic energy, like the screams that you hear throughout, they're not what I'm used to hearing in terms of like traditional like screamy music nowadays, but they're kind of recorded at maybe just not the best, where it's just like they're kind of off on their own. It just seems like a little bit like a of an outlier, but I guess it still kind of works. The whole motif of they're trying to build a prison, like it gets stuck in your head. And the only other thing that I gotta mention here is that the "Smacked My Bitch in Hollywood" section where Serj changes up his vocal stylings is very, very hilarious. But yeah, I really did appreciate what Prison Song brought to the table, like in terms of the opening of the album.
Okay, so just a note about that. I'm not doing this to be like, oh, you were wrong. Yeah. But that's actually not Serj doing the "Smack My Bitch Up" line. That's actually Darren.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, this song. I really liked this opening as well. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's funny that you say like hardcore punk and thrash with Slayer, because I did catch that, but as the blend that I put down as metalcore, because you hear those real like hard thrashing drums, particularly on the chorus, like you say. It almost feels like John Dolmayan on this album, because of its legacy as one of the top nu metal albums or most popular nu metal albums of all time, pretty much invented blast beats, or at least popularized them. Just the hitting the snare and the hi-hat at the same time, just like you're like trying to shake a coin out of a piggy bank. Mm-hmm. Just absolutely iconic. And his performance throughout the track is great. And the growls, the singing from Serj, who sings great. And I did appreciate how Darren's part on I don't know if this was their intention, but it sounds like they're making fun of Limp Bizkit directly, because it sounds such like Fred Durst. It's almost impossible to say, wait a minute, they knew what they were doing. That sounds like a Fred Durst accent. That I hear what they're trying to do. And then to go from that back to Serj basically shouting out factoids about the American prison system, and it goes in that chorus, they're trying to build a prison. I mean, it's funny, it's political. It reminded me a little bit of Unsustainable, the Second Law from Muse's Second Law album, and just how it's very direct about the message it wants to send. But again, it does that with humor. It does that with a musical attack that is just fierce. And I have it in my top 3. I have it at number 2.
You have this at number 2.
I have this at number 2 right out of the gate.
All right, cool. I mean, like, out of like all the tracks here, obviously I don't have the bottom track, but like I can respect that, man. Like,
yeah, no, it was one of those ones where the first couple times I was like, but the third time I was like, no, wait, no, this is like one of the better songs on the album for sure.
I would agree. I'm curious as we dive into the review. Like, I know I said I didn't have a bottom track, but I know sometimes we talk about, like, ranking tracks regardless.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm curious if I can pinpoint, like, oh, yeah, no, it's that one right there. But, you ready to move on to Needles?
Yes, moving on to Needles. And here we have a song that musically sounds very similar to the opener. Definitely has that attack, and it has the blast beats, it has the growling, it has Serj singing very, very well. Pretty much everything that's said musically about Prison Song can be said about Needles. The difference, though, there's a couple major differences here. Number one, the lyrics are different, obviously, because it's a pretty straightforward song about struggling with addiction, and it's right there in the verses. And then the chorus comes along, and I mean, I was not expecting that, and trust me, I get the ideology behind it, but pull the tapeworm out of my ass is quite the line to repeat over and over and over again. And quite the visual, too. Not a great one. But I guess the point of that line is basically, rip the Band-Aid off, get this done and over with, let's, shift through as much as I can. Which does hit. It does hit very well. But again, aside from that, the other major part is that in the song, like the Prison Song was pretty straightforward, just bang, bang, wailing, wailing, 100 miles an hour to start the album. Mm-hmm. Here, especially on the bridge, it has more of a dynamic shift. So there are hard sections and there are soft sections, which is a nice change of pace. Did this crack my top 3? It did not. Is it one of my bottom songs? No. It's fine.
So, yeah, the whole pull your tapeworm out of your ass, that's the one of the main things that I'm gonna take away from Needles here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Shout out to you for calling out. Well, I don't want to say call out, but mentioning how you get the switch ups here. It's a nice flair. Could they have done 15 tracks of just going rah-rah or hit the stuff against the wall and call it a day? Yeah, sure, but it probably would not have made them as notable as they are today.
Right.
But one thing that I will say that I don't like about Needles, and this is just after repeated listens, my dislike for the specific thing I'm about to talk about, it basically almost melted away. But in the track, you get that traditional offbeat punk rock thing where someone's the drums and the instrumentals are just accenting the offbeat rapidly, and that never sits well on my ears. It's just an anti-kink.
Yeah,
if I'm gonna be honest with you.
They're trying to sound wrong for the sake of doing it and not really having a point to it.
Yeah. I listened to a lot of punk rock growing up, and that's a common trope that they would utilize, just hitting the offbeats. I'm oh, come on, you just sound stupid. So, I mean, if anybody wants to hear an early example of that, listen to anything early from Blink-182. And when I mean early, I'm not talking about Enema of State. I'm talking about Dude Ranch and the albums before that. But going more back into Needles here, yeah, I mean, I really don't have much else to cover other than what you threw down on the table. I will say, though, lyrically, I do like how the verses do show the progression of drug abuse. I mean, in verse 1, you get the lyrics, I cannot disguise all the stomach pains and the walking of the canes when you do come out and you whisper up to me in your life of tragedy. And verse 2, you get, I cannot deny all the evil traits and the feeling of the crates when you do come out and you slither up in your pimping majesty. So people when drug abuse starts to become a thing, you get stomach pains, you get that urge and everything like that. Again, I've never abused any drug. The only drug that I do is caffeine and alcohol. That's about it. But as stuff starts to infect your life like a tapeworm, things start to become evil, and you start to change who you are, and you start to hear that voice and how it commands you to consume more drugs. So, but yeah, shout out to System of a Down for coming out with an anti-drug song in the early 2000s.
Right, yeah. Which is either too early or too late, depending on who you ask. But yeah, no, and I think the other more linear simile or metaphor with a tapeworm is that when you ingest the tapeworm, it starts eating you alive because that's what a tapeworm is set to do. So, but yeah, I'm pretty solid and set with Needles being what it is. Ready to move on to Deer Dance.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So talk about like choruses again. Like this chorus here is fantastic. Song is about police brutality, and you get like the punishing riffing and like the screams and and shout out to Serj for having such a dynamic vocal range. And I'm not even talking about low to high, but his ability to switch from singy kind of stuff to whispery to full on screaming, and the way that he sounds here is fantastic. Like the lyrics, pushing little children with their fully automatics, they like to push the weak around. Like, oh my god, that's gonna be stuck in my head for days. I did like the guitar work here in Deer Dance. I thought it was pretty impactful, and I also, specifically with the guitars, I found it interesting that it almost seems like the guitars were doing. Like they were doing stingers at the ends of other guitar parts. I thought that was a really cool moment, like on the instrumental front. And the in terms of like Serj's vocal showmanship, I'm gonna call it that. I do like the Middle Eastern kind of flair to it, and that kind of gives way to their Armenian heritage. So, and yeah, just the way that the band's able to execute the loud softness here. I'm always a fan of a band able to properly execute dynamic range. The bridge is pretty sweet. I would still say for all the tracks here so far, they kind of land in the same kind of sphere for me. Like, they're great tracks, but they're very much I hear this, nothing really stands out per se. They're all just good System of a Down tracks.
Yeah, so my thoughts on Deer Dance. First of all, I thought that the music was still good, but it felt like this was the third straight song in a row that was basically sounding the exact same. Like, the attack was the same, the speed was the same. And really the only part of it that stood out as far as any musical change is the bridge. The bridge I thought was quite good on this track musically. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. The lyrics are great. I know you mentioned the chorus already. To me, the highlight of the song is in the pre-chorus, where Serj sings, "Beyond the Staples Center, you could see America with its tired, poor, avenging disgrace, peaceful, loving youth against the brutality of plastic existence." And that is such a great line, because basically what he's saying is, once you look past the glamour and shine of LA, because Staples Center, for those who don't know, is where it's a stadium. It's an indoor stadium. It's where the Kings play, the Lakers play. It's where the Clippers used to play. I think they have their own arena now. And I think it's called something else now. I know it was called Crypto.com Arena at some point. It might still be that.
I think it is.
Unfortunate aside. It's saying once you get out of the glamour of LA and you see what happens in the neighborhoods, you'll see something a lot uglier than this glamour that LA is known for. And it does so very well. It's very similar to Prison Song in that regard, how it goes from what your image of something is to what it actually is, and the anger that fuels that. This did not land in my top 3, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good because, again, the lyrics are great and the band sounds good. So
yeah, and I will say I applaud the group for coming out for such a lyrically focused album so far. And I mean, it's not incredibly dense. We're not getting Joni Mitchell kind of levels of lyricism here,
right?
But each song has brought a message to the table so far. So shout out to them and their ability to construct such great songs on the lyrical front and on the song front too.
Yeah.
So, you ready to talk about why that jet pilot flew over the bay?
Yeah, let's talk about the jet pilot flying over the bay. And right out of the gate, I was turned off by this track just because it went from minimal change to no change. Like, it feels like this song picks up right where the last one left off. The only difference is the lyrics are worse because the chorus goes like this. Wired were the eyes of a horse on a jet pilot, one that smiled when he flew over the bay. And then repeat that, that's your chorus. First one. My horse is a shackled old man. His remorse was that he couldn't survey the skies right before they went gray. My horse and my remorse flying over a great bay. And here's the thing. I could have clicked on that and found out what it meant, but I didn't want to. Because that, I'm sorry. Especially considering this band just did what they did on Deer Dance and Prison Song particularly, and I'll even throw Needles in there. These lyrics are just not up anywhere close to that level. And musically, it sounds pretty much exactly the same as Deer Dance and Prison Song. I keep wanting to call it Prison Break. I don't know why. Because that would be actually better for their worldview. But yeah, like this one turned me off quite a bit. Like the second and third time I listened, I was just like, enough already. So yeah, we have arrived at one of my bottom two. It's my second worst.
Oh, I'm curious to see what your first.
My first worst is.
Yeah, your first worst. So, but yeah, I think this is where like we might just diverge in terms of opinions because like Jet Pilot is very much like thrash metal and like hardcore punk to a T. Like it basically just blitzes through the whole track and like there's a couple moments here or there that I was able to pick out that I did enjoy. This is not one of my favorite tracks. I'm gonna say that right now. But like this again, like you can really tell the hardcore punk influence with this track here. The song, like the way that I took the lyrics, it was about the carpet bombing happening in Armenia. And also like before I even proceed any further, the group, I don't want to say it was heavily influenced by the Armenian genocide back in the early 1900s, but like that has basically launched them into like what their musical direction was in terms of like speaking out against oppression. So we're not going to dive into that, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to do your own research, there's probably countless amount of Wikipedia articles. You can probably find a couple podcasts. Maybe we'll do a spin-off series called anyways.
Maybe not.
But yeah, the other thing about Jet Pilot that I did enjoy myself is that there were certain moments where Serj had like a weird vocal effect going on during the in the verses where like it almost seems like the he was mentioned the guitar pitch. I thought that was a nice touch. And just overall, like the guitar work here by Darren Malakian here is really, really great. I do like it a lot. And yeah, just in terms of lyrics that I really did gravitate towards, I know this might be one of our most disagreements here in the review here, but I did like the line in the chorus where he was saying, why were the eyes of the horse of the jet pilot, one that smiled when he flew over the bay? Considering the song is about carpet bombing and how that jet pilot smiled, like that is pretty kind of hard, haunting. But just overall, Jet Pilot, it's still gonna go into that. I don't want to say a mushy middle, but we're still in the same kind of lane that this is System of a Down to a T. They have each track has its own moments that stand out, but nothing's really pulling me by the chest and say, hey, listen to this.
Yeah, nice plug. Yeah, I'll go as far as saying this. I don't think this is a bad song particularly. it just got repetitive sonically to the point where I just didn't want to hear this multiple times. And as far as it being about the Armenian genocide, I obviously I'm not going to disagree with you on that because that's what their direction is, and they did have a lot of influence, especially even when you're born several decades after that. If you grow up in an area that's still recovering from that, it's going to be impossible not to learn about that and sort of feel the influence of that. But I will say the fact that you had to explain that to me kind of is the point, because when you listen to a song like Prison Song, it's explicit. Like, you don't have to think like, oh, what are they talking about? They come out with facts just saying, the American prison system, added X amount of people in 1985. Like, when they go from that to this, to me, it felt like a downgrade.
And that's totally fair. I like when you were explaining your reasoning for not liking Jet Pilot. I'm like, no, that seems right. Like, now if my favorite track is your bottom track, like we might fight.
I don't think that's gonna happen, but we'll see.
All right. So speak about like tracks here. We're gonna go over to X, the next track here. So for me, X seems like we're still riding the waves of Jet Pilot in terms of like that, like punk rock energy here. Here you find more of that offbeat punk stuff that I didn't really care for. Specifically with X here, like I know I said like with Needles, like it eventually like my hate for that kind of stylings in that song eventually wore down for me. But with X, it still was like it still was there pretty prominently. The outside of that offbeat punk sections that I mentioned, like the overall feel of the song, like the chorus is great. It's simple but effective. The song itself is about immigration, overpopulation, and well, again the Armenian genocide of 1915. And just the only other note that I really have about here is like I do love how the energy that Serj is bringing to the table on the vocal front, like how frantic he's singing here it's really good. It's really effective. And the section where the vocals peak in with the line "We don't need to" and the instrumental hits occur, like that was probably the highlight of the track for me, because you're just grooving, and like someone grabs you by the chest, being like, "We don't need to," and then you just keep walking down the street, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, again, not a track that stands out to me for one reason or another in terms of like giving it like the crown or being like, "Nope, you deserve to be a bottom track." So yeah, X is a it's a pretty standard track for me.
I'm probably higher on this song than you are. It's not my top 3, but it's probably in the top half of the album for me. And I disagree with your idea of, I kind of understand where you're coming from with this sounding similar to Jet Pilot. But to me, that groove that you're talking about before it hits the blast beat chorus of "We don't need to," to me, that was the highlight, because I thought this was finally a switch up from the very 100 miles an hour punk thrash that they had for the first 4 songs, particularly on the last 2 before this song. It reminded me a lot of Pantera, like prime Pantera, like Walk or Cemetery Gates. That I heard that and I really liked it, because I like that sound of groove metal where it just feels like you have the solid like thwang of the guitar chords. John Dalmayan just putting in a solid groove in the back. Like it's not very technically savvy, but it gets the job done. And then when the chorus does come along, like you said, it does grab you by the throat and they say, "We don't need to," and it does make a strong affection. And I'm glad you mentioned that this song is about immigration and overpopulation, because at first thought I thought it was about overpopulation, and I did look it up and it said it's about immigration. I was like, oh, okay, that's slightly different, I guess. But the words are great, and yeah, this probably on another day could have crept into my top 3, but just missed on this one. So yeah, I really did like X.
And well, I'm glad that your opinion about X is higher than Jet Pilot, because I would say that probably X is a superior song overall. But like, yeah, shout out to the chorus. Like, it's very reminiscent of Riding a Motif, kind of like prison song, where it's just like, we don't need to multiply, we don't need to multiply, and it's just like, oh well, shout out to System of a Down for coming out with a celibacy song.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means, because you don't have to be celibate in order to not multiply. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway,
you ready to move on to some Chop Suey?
yes, Chop Suey, the big one, I would say it's the big one. This is probably the one song people know most from this album.
Yeah, one of the big three, but in terms of notoriety, this is probably like the biggest one. So.
Yeah. So it starts with that intro where you have the frantic acoustic guitar, and then you have Dolmayan on the toms just creating this very, I want to say jungle beat because we've used that term too often, but it definitely has a simmer to it. It doesn't go right into the bang bang. It simmers. It builds. And then it hits the dun, 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 the main riff of the song. And to me, I really like that intro because it showcases not just a lot of musical depth compared to the rest of the songs that we've been talking about so far, but in and of itself, it creates musical depth. It goes from just acoustic, it builds in with the drums, and then it goes into full metal and all of this before Serj even says a word. And then it gets to the famous part, where Serj goes, "Wake up! Somebody do it, make up! Put your keys on the table! Something about the table!" I'm not going to try to do like a word for word because he's much better at that than I will ever be.
Oh, yeah.
And, as meme-worthy as that moment is in musical history, it's also a really good set of lyrics because, it doesn't make sense until you get to the chorus, which is just the highlight of the album for me. Because not only is it a great couple of lines about how, you don't understand my self-righteous suicide. I tend to cry when angels deserve to die. Paraphrasing, obviously. And that contrasts so well with the wake up, make up, table fable lyrics because you can hear Serj singing from his heart. Like, he realizes that, hey, these things that I'm talking about, whether it be prison systems, overpopulation, the bombing of my ancestors, and everything else we're about to talk about, I understand that you're not going to get this, and it pisses me off. Like, you are out there, waking up, putting on your makeup, and trying to create this magical story out of a mundane life. Here I am trying to fight for the decency of our existence. And it's so good. His singing, especially his harmonizing with Darren, is just beautiful. And it just works so beautifully because those moments where it floats and it's almost symphonic or orchestral, it contrasts with the very good hard rock done by the band. It is such a dynamic song. It is a heartfelt song. It is just really, really, really good. And shocker, I have it at number 1. It's in my top 3. It's the best.
I concur.
Okay.
So
this is one of those ones where I feel like it's and I know it may be cliche to say, but it's one of those we have ears moments where it's just like, it's this one. Yeah.
So this did land in my top 3 at number 2.
Oh.
So there was another track.
Okay.
That
all right.
obviously beat it out, but anyways, you were right on the money with what makes this track so good. And shout out to you for dissecting the lyrics pretty effectively because I took the whole meaning and the heart of the song basically about Serj trying to pull people out of their own asses in terms of especially how verses are laid out, and then like I thought the chorus was more about like oh hey, like people being like, oh look at me, I'm making such a fable for myself, oh like you don't trust in my self-righteous suicide, like people just being very self-righteous. But I like your dissection a little bit more better, so shout out to you, excellent job there.
Thank you.
In terms of just other moments that I could talk about with Chop Suey, I with the iconic verse delivery that Serj does implement here. I love how the band's able to be with him beat for beat there. Like that makes it for a very good musical moment for me. And just the way that the chorus ends with Serj landing on the word die, and it goes into a blast beat section. Like, that was an awesome moment for me. The bridge section is so good. It's the second best bridge on the whole album. Like, this is where, Serj is, I kind of taking a page out of Jesus's book in terms of like the biblical imagery is there, pretty pound for pound, word for word there. And I did like the addition of keys and strings at the last chorus. That was such a nice touch. It's not overpowering, but it's still effective in its own right. And yeah, just a little bit about the history about Chop Suey here, if I can indulge you.
Absolutely.
So producer for the album, Rick Rubin, cites this song as one of his most important projects. So, shout out to this song here and Rick Rubin as a whole. He did an interview with Rolling Stone, basically saying about the song, that the song was originally going to be called Self-Righteous Suicide, and the record company rebelled. Now, I don't know if they rebelled in the sense of they didn't like the word suicide being thrown into a track title, or they're like, hey, be better. We'll see. But he remembers wanting to go to the mat and keep the title in terms of keep the self-righteous suicide. But the band decided hey, let's call it Chop Suey. And he thought it was kind of funny. So that's how it got its name. And also, I'm also gonna mention there was a controversy with this song because this album was released in September of 2001. So yeah, for those of you who aren't aware about history, first of all, I hope you enjoyed that 30-year coma.
Right.
But you missed a lot. But anyways, yeah, just the line about self-righteous suicide. It got banned on the airways for quite a while because people were censoring a lot of songs back in that time. Outside of the history about the track, one other thing I'm gonna just shout out. I do love how the track does begin with that context of hey, this song was originally called Self-Righteous Suicide. You get the right off the gate, it's almost like a pure studio moment where you hear Serj saying, hey, we roll in suicide. So it's a nice little nod to the original track title. But yeah, second favorite track for me, man.
Yeah, so quick aside before we move on to Bounce. You mentioned that it got banned by the radio. It was one of 165 songs that were banned by Clear Channel after 9/11. And some of the songs on this list are laughable. I'm not going to go through all of them. Actually, it's more than 165 because I forgot about this. Under each of the artists on the Wikipedia article, it has the songs that were banned by them. And the one category for Rage Against the Machine says all songs. So they just completely banned Rage Against the Machine from the radio after September 11th. Because, the First Amendment. Anyways, some of the ones on here are just dumb. Cat Stevens' Morning Has Broken is on there. James Taylor, Fire and Rain. Disco Inferno by the Tramps. Okay, that one makes a little sense. Jump by Van Halen. Get Together by the Youngbloods. Like, it is such centrist BS on here. I think there's 7 AC/DC songs on this list. Walk Like an Egyptian from the Bangles. What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. What the hell, Clear Channel?
They were ultra sensitive, man.
They were. Like, I just, Oy vey. Anyways, but yeah, Chop Suey, great song.
So the next track is Bounce. And what a BC song it is, man. It's incredibly refreshing in an album as dense, as heavy as a album as this is, for this track to exist. And yeah, I love it a lot. It's we've covered a lot of heavy lyrical themes here, but this song's essentially about sex. 100%. And it's almost about group sex. The face that you're making is hold on.
There was nothing in this. I mean, okay. I'm not trying to cut you off here because I'll let you finish your thoughts. But aside from the topics of there being, him trying to impress girls with his pogo stick. Oh, okay, now I think.
There you go.
But okay, just finish. I'll get to my thoughts.
Well, you talk about the verse first is him talking about, I went out on a date with a girl a bit late. She had so many friends. I brought my pogo stick just to show her a trick. She had so many friends. And the chorus goes, jump, pogo, 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 bounce, pogo, 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 down.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much about sex.
All right.
What was your interpretation of it?
I'll get there.
Oh, okay. Wow. So yeah, just the chorus is really, really good. It's very fun. I love the the energy about it. And just I love how the track could have existed within that lane, but it goes kind of in a left field kind of bridge where it kind of just goes into more of a spacey kind of atmosphere, but then it gets swiped away by the rest of the band, finishing out the rest of the track in the same kind of lane. And just the work by the guitars and the band as a whole, especially in the verses where things just get a little bit more arpeggiated. It was nice for me. We arrived at another favorite track of mine. This landed at number 3.
Number 3. I completely respect that. This was another one that came pretty close to being in my top 3 because it's so dumb and ridiculous, and I mean that fully complimentary. Again, you nailed it, where the biggest shock of this song is just how, after the density of songs like Needles and even Jet Pilot and X and Chop Suey especially, for this song to just come out as dumb fun. And to me, sonically, it sounds like exactly the type of song you would play at a metal concert in order to open the pit. And that's kind of what my main takeaway from this was. To me, the pogo, pogo, pogo bounce is not a euphemism for sex as much as it is a command for the audience. Jump around, get crazy, let's go. I mean, lyrically, now that you mention it, I do see the obvious thing of the pogo stick trying to impress a girl. Right. But the way Serj sings it did not convey that to me at all. To me, this is not a song that even conveys sex. When he sings about bringing his pogo stick out to the girl to impress him, I'm imagining a guy in boy clothes, wearing the multicolored hat backwards, the denim suspenders. He's got a big giant oversized lollipop in his hands. This is not a man that is going to be having sex. This is a guy who is dressed as a boy in either to watch the world burn or just get a laugh. To me, the song is so silly that it can't even possibly go in that direction. But On the other hand, I get it. I get it being what it's about. But yeah, to me, this is more of a, hey, let's cut the mood and just go crazy and dance around type of song instead of a song about sex. But either way, I like it. I like it a lot. Like, this is just a dumb, fun song that makes you want to bang your head. And it came really close to getting my top 3, but didn't quite get there.
Oh, okay. So I'm curious to see what the other top track is.
We'll get there.
Oh man, hopefully we share it.
Yeah, I mean we've already established my top 2 and my second least favorite, so I have my third favorite and my least favorite yet to go.
And I only have my the king.
The king,
because I don't have a bottom track here. So, you ready to talk about the next track here, Forest?
I'm ready. I'll be ready to talk about Forest in a second, but first, Ryan, I have a question for you.
And what would that be?
If our listeners enjoy what they're hearing and they're enjoying hearing us talk about System of a Down, they're thinking, what other bands have they talked about and what have they said about them? How is the best way that they can look that up and what is the best way they can support us going forward?
So in terms of, I'm going to, address the first part of that, inquiry there. So the best way that they can help look up, like, what we've done in terms of, like, all the bands and everything like that is, on literally the app or the means of you listening to us right now, on that specific app, like, dive into the rest of our back catalog and see what we have to offer. We've covered a wide range of genres at this point and artists. We've covered everything from Toledo to Taylor Swift. And also if by some reason you're, scrolling through our catalog and you're like, oh, they haven't covered X, Y, and Z, feel free to shoot us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. And in terms of helping us to continue on pogoing in terms of keeping the show, progressing and help supporting us, the best way that they can do that is literally still on that, platform that they're listening to us on. Do whatever action that they need to do to make sure they stay up to date with our episodes. A positive review goes a long way. And if you're listening to this on the YouTubes, make sure you stay up to date by subscribing to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, and throw a comment down below in terms of what you thought about this review and what do you think about, Toxicity by System of a Down as a whole. And even if you want to help to pogo a little further, we have socials. They're linked in the episode description down below. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Threads, and we have Blue Sky. All the taglines of there are TTA Listen. But from the bottom of my heart, dear listener, thank you for listening week in and week out. It's been an absolute blast, considering today's world, in terms of you can't go 2 seconds without being like, what is the world? I don't want to live on this planet anymore. Not saying I'm having any dark thoughts right now, but this project that we have is a welcome distraction considering the anxieties of the world today. So
as the kids say, whenever you're doom scrolling and you're just going SMH, this is a nice reprieve from that, and we thank you for taking the time out to listen to us and support us.
All right, so that being said, ready to talk about why we can't see that we are Serj's child. Anyways, here's Forest.
Yeah. I love how you said that. It's like, here's Forest, here's Wonderwall. Forest kicks off the back half of this record. And once again, this was a song that improved with listens time and time again, because at first I was a little turned off by the little yelps at the ends of each line, the verses. And I also thought that the lyrics as they were, because I know the lyrics are about being one with nature, and Serj sort of saying, we are all one with the earth. I thought the lyrics were kind of shallow, and I thought that they didn't hit as hard as I think they wanted them to. This is not my bottom song, for the record, because I thought that the groove as it was particularly on the verses, sounds great. And I think Serj sings really, really, really good on this track too. Like when he sings, what's the line?
Oh, why can't you see that you are my child?
Yeah, no, he sings that with about as much passion as he can, probably second to Chop Suey as far as like heartfelt moments on this album. Again, I just thought the lyrics were a little too shallow. Like there's a song later on that does this song better than this song, lyrically speaking. But I like the track. I like the track just on a sonic level alone. I definitely think it's one of those songs that would fit in the category of it's good as long as you're not paying attention, and it's pretty good when you're paying attention. Like it's a rocker. It's a really solid, good song that goes.
It's very much an album track, to be honest with you. So my thoughts about it for is like if I had to like pinpoint like in terms of rankings, this might be like the bottom track. But it's still like a good enough track in its own right that I'm not gonna label it as a bottom track, as like weird as that sounds. But I think it's pretty self-evident what we consider bottom tracks. Anyways, I digress. So it's just you did a good job covering Forest as a whole. I do like the overall flow of it, especially whenever the guitars and the vocals match up in the chorus, and they're doing the dun 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 dun. Like I thought that was a very nice touch. Just outside of that moment there, this seems like a very much like a jammy kind of song for me, because I do appreciate how the band's allowed to jam and how they're allowed to breathe. And in terms of just the other moments here that I want to highlight, I do like how in the bridge, how everything just drops down and they build up layer by layer by layer. That's a very effective bridge. And the only thing that I could take away from given the lyrics of maybe a little bit more weight and a little bit more meaning, whenever we're talking about like the lyrics, like why can't you see that you are my child? Why don't you see that you are my mind? Like Serj is singing from the point of view of like literally like Mother Earth, being like, hey, like you are my child, Earth. People that are on Earth, why don't you know that you are my mind? Like hey, the metaphors are there, pretty cut and dry. Overall, it's a pretty solid track. Outside of the lyrics being sung from the point of view of Mother Earth, and the guitar moments here or there, it's very much of an album track for me, to be real with you. So,
yeah, I'm right there with you. I would say it's a good album track, but definitely in the category of album track for me.
So, and it's interesting how, as much as I'm going to critique Forest, how it almost acts as a natural pivot point for like the next song in terms of like the overall track flow. And the next track is ATWA. And that acronym stands for Air, Trees, Water, and Animals. So, the more you know. So, I did appreciate this track here a little bit more than Forest for obvious reasons. But just the way that it's opening up, it's open and acoustic. I thought that was a pretty nice, opening, but that immediately gets swiped away by Serj singing "You Don't Care How About How I Feel," and that's almost used as like a motif in the same kind of lane as "Prison Song" was. How Multiply was X, and Jet Pilot, we're very much back into the lane of punk rock, thrash metal influence here, and I thought that was it's very effective, and just the way that Serj is able to bounce back and forth between the clean and scream vocals, in this track here, it's a very tight moment. And just one thing I just want to highlight though is just I'm gonna give Serj another shout out, is his ability to deliver such focused moments vocally. I don't think anyone else could top that or be as effective as he is outside of somebody in the rap game. But I digress. But yeah, ATWA, it's a solid pivot point for me. Maybe a step up from Forest.
So for me, ATWA, the verses are fine, but I didn't really think they stood out. What did stand out to me was the music, and on the verses, to me, this is the first time on the whole record that I heard something that sounded very much like standard no frills nu metal. Like it definitely felt like there was a vibe I can hear in like Linkin Park or the softer moments of Limp Bizkit where it feels like they're doing that. And then just out of nowhere, that chorus comes on. And how do I say this nicely? I feel like both Serj and Darren on this song particularly oversing a little bit. And I feel like the way that it doesn't gel really a whole lot at all. Like, it's impressive that Serj can roll his R's on the chorus, but it just comes out of nowhere, and it feels like he's overseeing or showboating to an extent. I don't think this is a terrible song, but it is my least favorite song on the album because it felt too standard at its soft points and too gimmicky at its hardest points. Like to me, and even then, it's not like horrible. Like it's not as bad as let's see, Raw from Sophie or I Know from Paul Simon. Like those are automatic like skips. Like this is just the album trackiest of album tracks, and I think they could do better, and they've already proved that they have.
I could totally respect that, man. I would say with the previous two tracks, like this track and the Forest, like we've kind of hit like maybe a mid lull, and I want to say like maybe that was effective in terms of sequencing because we get into the middle of the record, people are kind of in the groove. They're like, okay, well this is just like the gas station, a stopping point. We just need to refuel before we hit the road again. I almost got concerned because I didn't think, based on like how you were talking, like you were flirting with the idea that this is going to be your bottom track, but you were like, I'm like, wait, I'm looking at the rest of the tracks. I'm like, what? Like, what's going to be your bottom track? Are we going to really actually fight?
No.
But yeah, you ready to talk about some science?
Yeah, science. So science goes from the typical nu metal that we heard on ATWA back to more of a thrash groove. And I'm glad you mentioned at the top that these guys were influenced by Slayer because I could hear it real thick on this one. And it sounds really good. Like they are thrashing and bashing away and doing a great job of not just switching things up, but proving their musical prowess once again. And this is the song, it's not my third favorite track, but this is the song I mentioned a few minutes ago about how Forest felt a little shallow. Here I think Serj's argument for nature and being with nature and treating it well is much stronger. It's concise and it's clear and it does remain provoking. Like it doesn't pull back any punches just because it sort of narrows down its argument and doesn't go for the angle of, like you said earlier, singing from the perspective of Mother Earth. I thought that was a little gimmicky. It wasn't bad, but it was a little gimmicky. Here, it's pretty much the argument that Forrest is trying to make with the precision of Prison Song. So, yeah, no, I like this one quite a bit. And again, not quite in my top three, but yeah, it's good.
I'm right there with you, and I will just say the difference between Forest and Science here in terms of its the way that it's able to deliver the message. It almost kind of reminds me of Science has a specific purpose of how Earth was gotten messed up. Forest is basically taking it from a Judeo-Christian aspect of saying, hey, you guys screwed up and it's your fault. It's all your fault. Earth. No. Shout out to the Nashville Predators. Always gonna be in my heart. But yeah, science here. It's a pretty good song for me as well. The chorus has such a great flow, and I love the overall cresting guitar lines that we found here. Darren does an excellent job there, and Science's failure and Mother Earth line is littered throughout the whole track, very much of countless examples at this point, to be honest with you. And the only other thing I got to mention about Science here is just the work by Darren overall is really great. I love how he's able to switch up styles. And, so in the bridge section here, you get, in the instrumental bridge, you get, some, something that isn't in English, to put it bluntly. It translates into roughly, Armenia, my sweetheart, I love your son. So, and when I mean son, I'm not talking about offspring. I'm talking about hail the sun. But yeah, just overall science. I feel like we're picking up the momentum for the record, but still not quite to peakness, if you know what I mean.
No, I understand it. It gets things back on the right track. Again, not just from a lyrical standpoint, but from a sonic standpoint. Because again, it felt like the last track was way too nu metal-y, typical bassline. This is what nu metal sounds like to people who don't like nu metal sound. Or Science sounds more like, again, a band with a hard rock sound, rocking hard and also delivering a stronger message on the environment and how we're mistreating it.
So, you ready to kick into the last leg of the record here with Shimmy?
Yes, let's talk about Shimmy.
So, yeah, Shimmy it's a fun track, man. One of my musical kinks is found here, the call and response between the vocals and the band, it's really good. I feel like that's executed very much to a T. And then the verses, they follow the focused delivery that the band executes just so well. I very much love the performances and how the group's able to come together to make a cohesive, piece of music there. The guitar work by Darren in the verses is really good, especially during the response part that I mentioned. And you also get a little swing section towards the bridge, which I feel like came out a little bit out of left field, but I like it considering the song is called Shimmy. And the end of the track for me was great. You just get Serj yelling, "Don't be late for school again!" That was fantastic. And overall, though, in terms of a message and what the song is about, it's basically talking about mind control for people. For example, Serj just screams in orders in the imperative mood, in inducing the people's mind control. The bridge clearly references this with lyrics: indoctrination of a nation, subjugation of damnation. So, very much a punk rock kind of song, very much Dead Kennedys-esque. Having fun with basically saying people are brainwashed. But yeah, Shimmy is a great track, but we're not quite there in terms of peakness, but it's still a great track nonetheless.
I wholeheartedly agree. It is first of all, I do think that it does shift back to the metalcore sound that we had at the very start of the album, which, considering we had switched up a little bit, I'm fine with that. Nice to get back on track. And the lyrics, like you say, do a great job of talking about being enslaved by the system. I did notice the little ghost at the end of each line in the verses, similar to what we heard in Forest, but I think a little better. The jazz swing at the end I did appreciate, although I felt it was very random and short-lived. It just comes and then it's gone and then that's it. It would have been kind of nice to have, switching between that and maybe have a little bit of it at the end. But again, that's just a personal afterthought. Aside from that, yeah, no, I can't really add much more than what you already said. It's a really good track. Did not crack my top 3 either.
So, yeah, man, we're really in the last leg here. So.
Yeah, we're down to the last 3 or 4 songs, depending on how we decide to talk about this.
I would say, like, when we get to Arto, like, we're going to treat it like a Jimmy He Whispers kind of situation where it's just like, it was a hidden track.
Okay.
So we can just do a little like, blurb about it when we're talking about our feelings with the aerials.
Okay.
But before we get over to that portion of the record, you ready to talk about the title track here, Toxicity?
The title track, Toxicity, and the band on this track sounds great, particularly Dalmayan on the drums. The way that he does the fills on the chorus part of it, even in the intro, which has the melody of the chorus without any of the vocals, just sounds phenomenal. Like, it's so fluid. He plays so... And how fitting of it that this band, again, were disciples of Slayer, because... the way Dave Lombardo of Slayer had that fluidity to just go around the set and do crazy fills. I will forever love the fills on my favorite song of theirs, which is Seasons in the Abyss. I was reminded a little bit of that on here, and it just sounds so great. Also sounding great, once again, Serj. Just really, really powerful. And you talked about how he has the tendency to go from a balladier type of vocal to a very powerful, angry vocal. Does that really well here. And the way he sings on the chorus of, what do you own the world? Disorder, disorder. Just, so good. And the instrumental break after the second chorus, where the band just sort of does a really, like, open the pit type of riff on a swing, sounds great. The outro reminded me a little bit of a song that did not exist when this song was released, which is a song down the line by System of a Down called BYOB. The outro was very similar to that. My only knock on this song is that the lyrics on the verses are a little meh. Not so meh that it brings down the overall feel of the song, but it just feels like it had the same issue to me that Jet Pilot had, where you hear the things that Serj is saying and you're kind of like, well, what does he mean by that? And because of the explicitness that he's done elsewhere, that was a slight turnoff for me, but not so much so that it kept this song out of my top 3, because it is in my top 3 at number 3, and we have all 3 in there.
Oh, okay. This track was almost going to be my top 3 at number 3. But then I realized I like the Pogo 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 song just a hair more. So
Bounce kicked Toxicity out of your top 3.
It did, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't deny like how much I looked forward to hearing Pogo. But yeah, and that's nothing to take away from Toxicity. Like, it's a really great track for a lot of the reasons that you already shared. I love the ability for the group to switch between styles in this song so effectively, and the drum work that you mentioned by Dalmayan was fantastic work. I think it's his best work on the whole album in terms of his ability to shine out, especially like the way he's able to like lead the change ups. Like, it's really top notch. I do like it a lot. And just the only other thing that I gotta mention here, not to steal any of your thunder, I just really, the chorus is really solid, and the phrase somewhere between the sacred silence and sleep. So like, Darren Malakian said like this song is basically about those who are medicated for ADHD, which that might be a little bit of a stretch. I think this is more about just general consciousness and escaping the toxicity that plagues the world, in terms of just like your just the way that the zeitgeist affects like humanity as a whole. But I do like the phrase somewhere between the sacred silence, which is just like I'm just gonna say like maybe just being complicit with the world, and sleep, which is like what some people will actually call a cousin of death, where like you're just not doing anything. So like I did like that. It was a very great touch. And the ending is a fun touch that you mentioned. I like how it seems like it could have kept going, but it just ends. But yeah, just overall Toxicity. It's a great track that executes their ability to flow really well, but it's not the king for me.
Wow. Okay, well, I think I have a good idea of what that king is going to be, or maybe it's just me hoping that it is what I think it is, but we'll see.
All right, so moving on to what I would like to call the full penultimate track on the record, because the last track on the record is Arto, which is just a like it wasn't originally released as its own track. It was just a tag on to Aerials that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, so Psycho, fun track. Has a really bouncy chorus. And just the way that the whole track opens up, it's a fun opening with a spacey kind of feel. And again, you get the band's ability to switch up from like a fun kind of bouncy kind of feel to more of a heavy melodic kind of side. I thought that was executed pretty well. I did like the instrumental hits here that you get sprinkled throughout the track, and just the overall chorus where, yeah, it's more critiques about Hollywood to a T. In terms of like groupies and everything like that, just being hooked on drugs and everything. I thought that was executed pretty well. I mean, like in the intro, you get Serj saying it's psycho, groupie, cocaine, crazy, and like that phrase again is utilized in a as a motif, which is a typical tool of the band at this point, because we're 13 tracks in, so like we've seen what they could bring to the table. It's a really good track. Not much else to really say other than that. I mean, just like I love the section towards the back end where the band's allowed to breathe and end the song. It's a really melodic song towards the end. But yeah, it's a fine track. I would put it maybe just outside of my top four. So, and that four would include Toxicity. So, like, this would be like number 5 in terms of the album rankings for me.
I'm not quite as high on this track as you. I thought it was okay. I didn't quite enjoy the switches. To me, it felt a little forced, like it did on ATWA, but not quite as forced. Because at first I heard that opening beat that had like a 4 on the floor, like almost disco feel, and then it just kind of goes away. It's like, oh no, we're back to hardcore blast beats. And it feels like a halfway point between a mosh song and a nu metal ballad. And to be fair, like it is impressive to hear them switch between the two, but it didn't quite land as hard for me. I thought this track more or less was slightly confused, but it's solid. It's a solid track, and I really dug the outro and the solo that's at the end of the track, because we haven't really had a whole lot of like major guitar solos on this album, and to hear that I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. But aside from that, yeah, I felt this was very album tracky, but not really that bad.
So, ready to end off the album discussion here with well, I mean, we're gonna group Aerials and Arto together, but the floor is yours. Tell us about Aerials, which is the last big single off the album here.
Okay, well, yeah, this, it's funny too when you mention that, because I did not realize that, like, even until, like, right when we started talking about it, I did not realize that Aerials was a single, because it didn't feel like one to me, and it feels like, of all the songs off this album that were singles, this is the one that has, at least to me, in my eyes, you can disagree with me, has dropped back the most with time. Like, people remember Toxicity and Chop Suey a little bit more than this one. But again, that's just from my perspective. Yours might be different. And to me, this is a full-on like nu metal ballad in sound. Like, it's very similar to a Future song they had called Lonely Day, but to me, it is better because the way that Serj and Darren sing on the throughout the whole track really is just great. Like their vocals are just fantastic, and it really does put them above most other bands when it comes to that because I mean, the only other person I can think of that has even close to that kind of range and soul depth as far as Numetal is concerned, at least from the top of my head, is Chester Bennington. That's it. And the way that Serj and Darren sing on this is great. Lyrically, it's about being one with nature, which I think is a great way to sort of seal up this album and, sort of realize, hey, there's another world out there that's not filled with all the BS we've been talking about, land without prisons, a land without, overpopulation, immigration, and war and disorder. So I thought that was great. Although, if I'm going to be completely honest, I don't hate this track. I like this track, but it did feel a little more toward the middle for me. Like, it felt like a simple track that lands nicely on the ears, does a good job of closing out the main portion of the album. And then it slides into Arto, which I thought was a bizarre choice, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad they went with it because it feels like the spiritual soundtrack to what Aerials is talking about. Like, if Aerials is a song about becoming one with nature, Arto is the sound of becoming one with nature. And it does have a good, authentic backing. I'm almost positive it is akin to folk songs or spiritual songs that would be native to Armenia, and it feels like either the starting of a new journey or the closing or the cleansing from this one. So I did appreciate that, but neither of them landed in my top three. But the floor is yours. Why is this one the peak of the mountain for you? And first of all, before I even get to that, Aerials is the one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not pulling a Manchester Orchestra.
I was gonna say I that's why I asked, because I know you did that with Manchester Orchestra and that caught me off guard. So I'm thinking maybe, but no.
No. So why Aerials? You might ask. The bridge section where the motif of the song and the groove of the song is laid on thick by the band and the guitars, and how it transports the rest of the track into the last chorus, and Serj comes in with a new renewed intensity with the vocals. Easily, that is musical bliss to my ear holes. Like, I can't really think of too many other examples off the top of my head that does that to me in terms of a music fan. Like, the band's coming together, and it's just such an effective moment that I just love it so fucking much. Like, that's the single reason why this track here, Aerials, soar above the rest of the album here. But, like, outside of that specific moment, just the way that it opens up with, like, just that menacing kind of opening. But it's not loud or anything. It's just, like, you get that bass riff by Shavo there doing excellent work. And then the way that the band just comes in, it's such a dizzying kind of effect. Maybe not dizzying, but it's, like, a whirlwind kind of effect compared to, like, the straightforward, like, 1, 2, 3, 4! Effect that we've had for the majority of the album, and like even outside of Chop Suey, like this is it was a very different direction for them, and just the overall feeling in the verses, like outside of like the parts where the vocals were singing, like I feel like you get an overall like sinking kind of feeling with how the instrumentals are adding stinger licks at the ends of phrases. Serj is doing an excellent job vocally here. Like, oh my god, it's so fucking good. And the chorus is good as well. And just overall, like, again, I cannot overstate that section from the bridge into the last chorus. Like, put that in my veins, and that is what's going to cure COVID for me for the next time I get COVID. So, and you're right on the money in terms of the lyrical content here. It's about being like, part of something much greater, that being like nature and such. And I absolutely love how this album ends with the band able to just dig into their aunt's history and really have that spiritual kind of chant. It's a very nice end for them. I cannot overstate it enough. And Aerials was a track that I wasn't really introduced to at first with System of a Down. It was a track that I think I heard on the radio once, and it just grew on me like a fungus. And oh my god, it's covered my body with spores at this point.
I respect that because obviously, if you had spores on your body, I would still respect you, but that's beside the point. But yeah, no, I dug this track too. Again, didn't quite land as hard for me as it did. Like I appreciated it just for what it was on a musical level. I'll have to go back though and listen to that because if you're recommending it that hard, I'll have to reconsider that. But no, I dug Aerials and I dug Arto as well.
So we've journeyed through Aerials and Arto, and since we've completed the journey there, there's only one thing that we can say, man. We can say those sweet, sweet, sweet words.
We did it.
We did it. We discovered what toxicity is in the city.
Yes. And we have tried to figure out what it means to be one with nature and clean ourselves of that toxicity or something like that. I don't know.
So I'm going to go first in terms of my overall, thoughts and ratings about this album here. A longer kind of album in terms of track listings. It's a beautiful Numetal record of maybe not a beautiful, but it's a beastie kind of one. I love the thrash metal aspects of it. I love the hardcore punk influences of it. The way that the instruments complement the vocals, and Serj just bringing such a unique vocal style to the genre and like the rock scene as a whole at the time. I can't think of one vocalist. I know I compared him to Jello Biafra earlier, but that's the only comparison I can come up with. But since then, there's not been one vocalist that has done what he's done for a group, and it stands. And the legacy's held up over the years. The big singles stand out for their solid songwriting: Toxicity, Chop Suey, Aerials. Stick Aerials in my vein all day long, and don't call me until Sunday. The B Cubs, at points they do have the ability to be album tracky, but they're pretty solid in their own right. I can't really point to one track and be like, this is a bad track. It's a subpar track. Lyrics are absolutely amazing. I love the incredible range where he could be talking about something very specific, like prison systems in America, or talk about just being on a pogo stick. So it's an incredibly great record. So in terms of an overall rating, I'm gonna give it a solid 8.5 out of 10.
So for me, this album felt so refreshing compared to the last couple weeks because even though I liked Toledo and Bon Iver for the most part, there were moments on those albums where I was just absolutely not. I didn't have that this week because even the lowest tracks for me, whether it be Jet Pilot or ATWA, they were at least good in their own terms of just being solid rock tracks. They're the ones where if you're listening to this album front to back in the background, there's nothing wrong with them. And it's only because of the standard that they set on other songs where you're just I don't know about that. And the fact they were able to set that standard is a testament to how good this album is. Songs like Chop Suey, songs like Toxicity, songs like Prison Song. I'll even throw Bounce in there. Bounce was just dumb fun on a high level. It rocks throughout. The band sounds great throughout. Serj sings great throughout. The harmonies are there. And at its worst, it's basic. At its best, it is revolutionary. The lyrics are great. And it definitely created what I think would be a strong argument for not just nu metal, but for political rock. Because it felt like this was released at a time where, because of the September 11th attacks, I felt like a lot of people probably gravitated toward this. And I was like, hey, maybe this has been an issue all along. And just a few years down the line, we got more stuff from System of a Down like BYOB that did this, and Green Day came out with American Idiot, and the rest was history. So yeah, I appreciate this album a lot, and I am going to go right there with you and give this album an 8.5 out of 10.
That makes the math pretty easy here.
It does.
Oh man, I think it's been a while since we've went tit for tit in terms of the score.
This might be the first time in the history of the show that we have agreed on the rating with a decimal point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun times, man. So, I'm glad that you enjoyed the record a lot. It's interesting that I didn't have any bottom tracks, but you had bottom tracks, but we landed on the same score.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is because, to me, I think the tracks at the top were so great. And again, the relativity of the bottom tracks, like for Dead Man's Cigarette and Short Story, just to name the last two examples of bottom tracks I had, those were easy skips. Like, they were unlistenable. Here, again, I think it was just the repetitiveness that drove me to like, nah, I don't know about this one. Whereas, like, if I were listening to the album front to back, I wouldn't skip them. But if I'm just, like, taking tracks from, like, this album being like, do I want to listen to them again? Probably not. But I wouldn't skip them if I was listening to the album as a whole. That's a difference I want to point out.
So, in terms of next album recommendations, I'm not gonna recommend a System of a Down album because, I haven't listened to any other ones except for this one, and I wanted to shout out a different group. I've kind of mentioned them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in this review already, but it's gonna be Dead Kennedys, and the album is Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Has a lot of intense political themes, has the satire kind of aspect to a couple of the tracks, and also has thrashy kind of performances, and the vocal comparisons are there. I made the comparisons between Jello and Serj a couple times throughout the review here so far. So for me, my next album recommendation is going to be Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables by Dead Kennedys.
This is legitimately tough because I'm not sure if there is an album I can think of that A, I've listened to in full, or B, goes along with what System of a Down is doing on this record. I've been thinking about it various times throughout this review about what my next album recommendation is going to be, because I'd like to recommend Seasons in the Abyss by Slayer, but I haven't listened to that album in full yet. This is tough. It's a little bit of a cop-out, I will admit to this up front, and it's purely a cop-out, and it's not self-promotion, even though we have talked about this album in the past. But for sheer sonic pulse and the themes going from different perspectives on war, on dealing with spirituality, I'm just going to cop out and say Metallica from 1991 is my next recommendation, because much like this album, sonically, I can't think of an album that's quite different as far as Paul's. Again, one that I've listened to front to back. If I listen to more Slayer, I'd probably recommend Slayer. I can't, so I'm not going to. So, for lack of a better comparison, I'm going to go with Metallica's self-titled release from 1991.
All right. So, to recap, we both rated it an 8.5. And my next album recommendation is Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables by Dead Kennedys. And Matt recommends the self-titled release from Metallica in 1991, more often known as the Black Album. So yeah, check out those albums if you've enjoyed Toxicity by System of a Down, or if you just need a simple refresher or motivation to check out more Metallica or Dead Kennedys. So yeah, we just have one more thing to finish up one more thing, one more piece of business to settle before we officially pogo this review into bed.
Ah, very nice. So you're not going to get a choice this time around.
You are gonna pull the Captain Phillips on me?
Kind of.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, I'm going to low Captain Phillips, but on the other hand, I'm not going to make you choose because you've already chosen.
Oh.
So, going all the way back to January, I had made mention that there were 2 albums in the year of 2025 that are turning 25 this year. And this episode of Hey Listen to This is going to be released on May 24th. So, when this episode comes out, the album that we're going to be talking about is officially 25 years and 1 day old. And so, we're going to be talking about the other album that you did not pick back in January, because you picked Stankonia. And we're going to be talking about an album that came out of Detroit. This album, a very controversial album, and this is going to be another relatively dense political episode. We're jumping back a year to 2000 and talking about the Marshall Mathers LP from Eminem, God Help Us.
Oh man, we are going to be going back into my childhood, man. So...
little bit of mine too, probably a little bit childhood mixed with a little bit of high school. And I figured get this out at the very end of May because if we talked about it during June, I think I would get slaughtered for reasons we'll get into next week.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, if it's been a while, or if you've never listened to the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem, make sure you check it out before next week's review. That way you can have opinions about the album, you can have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are going to be bringing to the table. But yeah, man, what a review.
What a review.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, I can't wait for next week's review. I'm just going to, shimmy over to that review.
You can shimmy, I'll bounce.